Public Works meeting October the 1st, 2008 is now in session. Joining me is my esteemed colleague, Mr. Greg Smith. Now that we have a quorum, the meeting will begin. Mr. Smith, 1 through 6 is on consent. There's nobody opposing anything. We had 2 cards for number 3 to speak if they needed to, who were for the proposal. So with your permission, I'd like to move forward 1 through 6. So moved. 1 through 6, moved. Done. You don't have to come up. And I want to thank you, Christine Peters and Harvey Shields, for showing up to begin with. Thank you very much. Okay. You can leave. No. What are you in? For 7?
Number 4.
Oh, yeah, 4. You can go.
Okay.
Yeah, all approved, done. It'll go before the council on consent unless somebody comes up and wants to make a scream fest, and we might take it from consent into
But they should be waived or?
the likelihood is like 1 in a million, but you never know until the full council votes. Okay? All right. But it is unanimous by committee.
Announce it in number 4?
I said 1 through 6.
Okay.
You were part of that package. Okay. Item number 7. Somebody please
Item
tell
number
us.
7, continued from November 27, 2007 and May 14, 2008. CIO reports relative to proposed requests for proposals for film permitting services and related matters. This item has also been referred to Budget and Finance.
Okay, please. Hi.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Davis from the City CAO's office. And Council originally instructed the CAO and the CLA to issue an RFP back in June 22nd, 2007. Subsequently, or actually in June, 13th, 2005. Then later, they had further instruction to also issue an RFI June 22nd, 2007. Last November, we came to you with the draft proposal, and at such time, your committee instructed us to redraft the RFP to combine the scopes of work and to have a one-stop shop concept. So we have done so, and also to work with designated stakeholders to resolve issues relating to enforcement. So over the last 10 months, with the chair and stakeholders, we have had discussions around enforcement and this RFP. Our common goal has been to minimize negative impacts for filming on neighborhoods and assist the entertainment industry in avoiding community burnout. So as our dialogue though it does continue, we've come to the conclusion that further modification of the RFP is not needed in the area of enforcement. Enforcement is clearly the responsibility of LAPD, and we feel we can move forward with the RFP. Enforcement issues will be more appropriately addressed through other vehicles, some of which may include police department policies, police commission action, or city ordinances. Currently, the contract costs, we have budgeted up to $572,000 per year for the contractor. We are proposing eliminating the cost to the city taxpayers and encouraging proposers to minimize costs to the film industry. In general, again, we are now seeking a contractor to provide a variety of services and have this one-stop shop concept model. Bidders will be afforded the opportunity to submit proposals that include subcontracting aspects of the work if they choose to. We believe our approach is balanced and our recommendations keep both industry and community in mind. We want to, again, prevent burning out neighborhoods, which ultimately is bad for industry. We have defined service levels, and we feel it was necessary to include such in the RFP so potential bidders would have adequate information in order to provide their costs and clear expectations for potential bidders. We also believe it was important to provide objective oversight of the contract. We've also proposed notification guidelines that have not been adopted by council, but we felt it was necessary to give potential bidders an idea of what we were looking for when we talk about notification. So at such time, we may come back later and ask for council to actually formally adopt some kind of universal notification guidelines. Included with the RFP, we have with those draft notifications are, where notices should be placed, how far in advance, what information should be contained in them, and also what sort of documentation should be retained as proof that they were indeed completed. We've also included a list of terms that contain items that we see as non-negotiable. One example includes eliminating, again, the cost to the city taxpayers. We also believe by doing such that it should make the actual contract negotiations be more timely and efficient. So the recommendations before you are that you approve the draft request for proposal and authorize the city administrative officer to release the RFP and report back with the results of the competition no later than April 1, 2009, to authorize the CAO to make minor and technical adjustments to the RFP that are not inconsistent with the intent of the council and are in the best interest of the city, and instruct the CAO, CLA, and LAPD and other designated stakeholders to continue to discuss pending enforcement concerns related to on-location filming and report back to council.
A couple of quick questions. This is a draft. Has it been circulated so far to the community, this draft?
The draft, an actual draft was circulated, of course, last year when it was entered into record. There are problems, and we've worked with city attorney with really circulating a draft to community. If you get too much input from potential bidders, it can obviously pose ethical problems once you do release the draft. So I think through the stakeholder meetings we've had, we've tried to garner input, but not to the extent to say, here's a draft, mark it up, tell us what you don't like about it, tell us what you like about it.
My second question is, the stakeholder meetings, how many have we held, and has it been as inclusive as we can conceivably do?
I believe if you talk to the chair and so forth, I think it's try to include as many people as possible. There's been subgroups and people added to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and get the divergent issues and ideas and interests addressed. The actual number of meetings, I think as of May, we were up to about, 9 or 10 by then, and I know since May we've had probably at least 6 or 7 more, so.
The next question is, the final that you want to see, as you just stated, would be something that would be done by April? Is that what I heard you say?
Well, we
Or
would.
we would issue RFP by April, so between now and April, we would have to come up with what our final RFP is?
Well, actually, our proposed timeline's a little bit shorter than that. What we have proposed is basically getting the authorization through committees, public safety now, budget and finance, and full council by November 15th, and trying to release it before the end of November. And that's just to build in enough time so we could actually come back with our recommendation by April 1st, and then also give us a couple-month transition period should there be a transition from the current contractor to a new contractor.
Before I go forward, Mr. Smith?
I want to wait to hear conversations before I ask questions.
Yeah. Very
And I
good.
can always come back if there's
Okay,
additional.
and I just want to say to all the public that's going to speak, a lot of them don't know what this draft looks like, so they're dealing with where their energy is on the whole issue. Is that right?
Well, I know on Friday when the report was released and made public, previous people who have expressed interest, who responded to the RFI, over 82 people I sent notice that the meeting was
Very good.
occurring, a copy of the draft. So I know it might not have given a lot of time, but a couple of days notice for some.
Very good. If I could at this point, just hang to the side, and we're going to ask the comments to come up, as Mr. Smith suggested. Downtown LA is the name of it. CIA Amir. Come on up. Then could we have Ed Duffy also come on up? Could we have, is it Sarah Walsh? Did I get that right? Come on up. That's 3. Let's get Stu Miller. And then Eric Nichols on the standby. Come on up. I just want to note for the record that Mr. Richard Alarcon has joined. We have a full committee here for hearing it. Mr. Alarcon, we approved items 1 through 6 on consent. Can we have your support on that? Absolutely. And now we're on item number 7. Item number 7, we just got a report that the process to this moment has been maybe about 15, 18 different types of meetings over a period of time. A draft notice was sent out on Friday to some 80-something different groups. And I have right here now 1, 2, 3, 4 public speaking cards and a 5th one about to come up and speak. So we're just starting the public comments on it. Mr. Smith wanted to defer his questions until after he heard from the public. So let's start with Kayamir. Sia. Very good.
Thank you.
Please.
I'm representing small businesses.
Bring the mic a little closer to you. You're on the record.
Sure. I'm representing a lot of small businesses which are front store type of business on Broadway between 3rd through 8th Street. We received the form for RFP back, I think was December, and we got 300 signatures. Okay, we signed, and we sent it to administrative office that we put down on concerns regarding the filming in downtown area. Our main concern is when the filming is done, they just block off the streets, especially on the weekends, which is our bread and butter, depends on foot traffic on Broadway, and they reroute the buses, and they completely take over the sidewalks, even though they do have a permit, okay? But mentioning on a permit, still has rules and regulations, being 200 feet away from the front of the businesses. They totally disregard all of these notes, and they just take over. So we want to have an agency that could be one agency that we could talk to, not Film LA, then go to the other agency. I'm sending a notice, and the other person comes in and says, oh no, I'm not doing this. All of this kind of thing, we feel that it's good to deal with only one agency that handles it. It doesn't matter is it from the city or a private agency, that before the filming is done, notify us in advance for scheduling and forecasting, and also effect of the filming. We do support filming in LA. We understand the consequences of not having film in LA. We realize that it needs to be done. On the other hand, we do have some obligation of paying rent and keeping our doors open to the public. Most of the landlords where they assign their filming to be done on their premises, apparently they do make a deal on a side, but with Film LA, that the landlord is going to be taking care of those front stores, which I've been there for past 4 years. Landlords, they never have chipped in or discounted out for a day of the filming has been done.
Okay, I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ed Duffy.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask Sarah to go first, just
Sure you
because
can.
what I have to
Whatever you
say
say.
sort of
Go ahead,
responds
Sarah.
to something she's
you.
going to say. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rosendahl, Councilman Smith, and Alarcon. I'm Sarah Walsh, and I'm here today on behalf of the Motion Picture Association of America. And I'm here on behalf of Disney, Fox, NBC Universal, Sony Pictures, Paramount, Warner Brothers, several of whom are represented here today. At the outset, I just want to thank the city for making the development of the RFP a participatory process that included not only MPAA, but our industry colleagues and community members. And we're committed to working with the committee, the CAO, and the CLA on an RFP that will address the city's needs and serve the film industry, as well as the communities that are affected by filming. Because of the Jewish holiday this week, we haven't had an opportunity to conduct an exhaustive review of the RFP. So my comments today will just sort of highlight some of the top line things that we feel have been improved and other challenges that remain. Several positive changes have been made to the RFP, and first, enforcement is now acknowledged as the responsibility of the city through LAPD and not the contractor, which we feel is very important. Second, LAPD is designated as the current city issuance authority for the permit. Previously, there was no city department identified there. And also, the new draft also provides that specific neighborhood guidelines should take precedence, which we also believe is important. However, the RFP is not without its challenges. Regarding the timing for the release and approval of film permits, at present, the majority of permits are issued with less than 24 hours. For example, 4 p.m. on Wednesday for a 7 a.m. call on Thursday. While we recognize that the city has made a reduction from 48 hours to 24 hours, this still places an undue burden on both the city and the production companies. First, because many of the city departments don't have appropriate staff to turn around these permits in 24 hours occasionally. And then also because we have last-minute changes to our productions, so weather or script revisions or change of location, that sort of thing. There are also other issues with timelines in the draft. 5 days advance notice when a community survey is required, which is hard if you're doing 7 to 8 day schedule on episodic television. You might not know your location 5 days in advance, for example. And then there are other questions about the community surveys. They are required for filming outside the hours of 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Does that apply just to residential neighborhoods, or does that also apply to commercial and industrial zones as well? That's a small but significant distinction in our opinion. Just a few other things. Throughout the RFP, there's reference made to the city, but with no specific department or office or person. And there are references to the responsibilities of LAPD, the CAO's office, and the controller's office, but still there are many references to just the city. For example, the RFP states that if you need changes to a permit, you're supposed to go talk to the fire safety officer or the LAPD officer, but if there's no officer of either kind assigned, then you should contact the designated city personnel. And what does that mean? And who is that? And it's particularly if you're after hours, who and what department at the city would be available to take complaints, to do complaint resolution as the RFP suggests. And when there is a resolution required for complaint, which type of complaints are the responsibility of the city and which are the responsibility of the contractor. So those are several of our sort of questions that remain yet to be answered, but we will be getting you a document and then within the next week with some more detail that kind of discuss where we see positives and things that need to be fixed or clarifications, and we look forward to working with the committee and the CLA and CAO on
I
that.
appreciate what you said.
Thank you.
Thoughtful, and we look forward to that report.
Thank you.
Ed?
Yeah, good afternoon, Chairman Rosendahl and Council Members Smith and Alarcon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll be brief. My name is Ed Duffy. As a little background, I'm currently a business agent with Teamster Local 399. We represent drivers, casting directors, and over 700 location manager, commercial scouts, and assistants working in Los Angeles. And prior to this, I was a location manager for 28 years in Los Angeles. Yep. Location managers groups that directly or indirectly obtain the permits and permissions to film in and around the city of Los Angeles on behalf of the studios and companies working very hard to meet all guidelines that the permit requires. Over the past few months, I have been part of the working group asked to assist in redrafting of this RFP on direction from this committee. There are certain elements, such as enforcement and police department roles, that are still being dealt with, but I believe that we have changed the direction of some aspects of the original RFP to the better. I commend your office, the CAO, the CLA offices, and all those who have worked so hard to get this to this point, especially those in this room who have had a crash course in the permitting process. That being said, I still believe there are specific things in the RFP that, as Sarah stated in her testimony, most of which I won't repeat here, still need to change, such as the community survey timeline, and at the same time address the community issues and concerns about community issues that we all care about. The permitting process requires some latitude and judgment for the permit service provider to be able to perform quickly and efficiently. I don't believe that's properly stated in the RFP. I know you have heard this before. We are dealing with a very fragile time for the motion picture and commercial business in Los Angeles. Jobs are dwindling every day. I know it's been said before, but I can't tell you how frightened my members and I are with runaway production and incentives from other states. Besides the Ugly Betty situation that we've all heard about, the other productions such as Life on Mars, a new series on ABC whose pilot was done here in LA, but because of incentives, the studio changed the locale of the show, reshot the pilot for New York, and moved it there. Countless pilots are now being written for states with incentives, and the feature business has all but disappeared. We can't afford to get this wrong. Balancing the need of the city with the need of the industry is what we are all striving for here, and I hope that with the changes that will be requested in the document provided next week by the industry and labor, that we can move closer to an RFP that meet most of those goals.
Thank you for that. And for those who have still been walking in, we're on item number 7. 1 through 6 has been approved on consent. If anybody else wants to speak before this committee about item number 7, you can fill out a card at this point. I want to thank the 3 of you so far. You must be?
Stu Miller,
Here you go. You're on.
you knew that.
Yeah.
Council members, thank you for allowing me to speak. I want to give you a different point of view about the issues of on-location filming in neighborhoods. As a resident, I live in Colfax Meadows, a neighborhood in Studio City, which is heavily filmed. And I'd like to also to say I've been in the entertainment industry almost 50 years, so I certainly have a good feeling for the need to keep production here in Southern California if possible. I'd also like to point out, however, that that's largely a state issue because the state of California has not issued competitive incentives to production. We're losing, as somebody pointed out, 40 states, I guess, have more.
Sorry, what was the last?
Something like 40 states and other foreign countries obviously have more appealing.
I don't know if they're more appealing, but they're
Well-
40 states.
Better deals.
In any case, they are aggressively pursuing production. But this is closer to home. So I'd like to first address, I could talk for way more than the allotted time, but so let me zero in on what I think is a significant issue. The community surveys, basically, they're useless. Because by the time the community survey really comes out, it's a fait accompli. That shoot's happening, and it doesn't really matter whether people who have an issue with it have anything to say about it or not. Furthermore, the whole concept of those surveys is that you're going to get the general sensitivity of the community to the specific project being proposed. Well, hello. Most people are not home. I happen to live and work at home, and many people in Colfax Meadows do, as well as other places in the city. So it does matter when 150 people show up, no matter how pleasant and polite they may be and sensitive to my concerns, directly across the street. I happen to live across the street from somebody who's made a business out of renting his home to production companies. It's not unique to him. In our neighborhood, we've identified more than half a dozen residences that are used on a regular basis. So, just jumping ahead. Interestingly, in this RFP, encouragingly even, it says, additional or modified survey requirements may exist if the location being impacted is covered by a, quote, covered by, quote, neighborhood filming guidelines. Well, we know them as special conditions for filming in neighborhoods. There are 120 plus of those currently in force. But they're largely, they don't address this problem. The guy across the street from me and others in close proximity are making a lot of money renting their homes out. I don't begrudge that. I'm not against filming. I'm not saying let's not have any more filming in Colfax Meadows. That would be foolish. I'm saying let's spread it around. There are over 200 residences just in our little 40-square block neighborhood. 17 of them have been used in the last 2 years, and 6 or 7 of them frequently. So those people are making a lot of money. They're getting thousands of dollars a day without any concern for people who live nearby. And yet I've been told that you can't require production companies to reduce what they pay to Mr. Homeowner and spread some token payments around. Not that this is about money, because it's truly not. It's an acknowledgement that our quality of life has been substantially undermined by overshooting, overfilming.
Okay.
So-
Thank you very much. Appreciate all 4 of your comments. I'd like to invite 3 more additional folks who have filled out cards. First, Melvin, I'm pronouncing it Ruba? Remba. There you go.
Can I ask Mr. Miller one question?
Sure you can. Mr. Miller?
Mr. Miller,
Mr. Alcon wants to ask you a question.
how long have you lived in Studio City?
35 years, 36 years.
It was called Studio City when you moved in?
The Studio City, yeah, it's been a community in Los Angeles for long before that. Colfax Meadows is one of the first settled
Okay.
places on the LA River in that part of the community.
Okay, thank you.
He's not taking my time, is he?
No, don't you worry. Okay, Eric Nichols, and I have Marilyn Bittner. Go for it.
My name is Dr. Mel Remba. I'm Vice President of Mount Olympus Property Owners Association. We are a community of about 700 homes in the Hollywood Hills. And the Hollywood Hills have their own set of unique problems in terms of filming. And our community has had a long and cordial relationship with Film LA and its predecessors. However, we welcome a new draft of regulations which we haven't seen. I'm here only because Sonia Kwan and other people at CD4 alerted me by email 24 hours ago that this meeting is here, and I'm representing my community. I want to speak to the fact that the community input must be included in any document, any RFP that you deliberate and consider, because largely it slips through the cracks. And while we don't want to micromanage these drafts, we really want to have community input in areas that are specific, with specific needs, like Mount Olympus, where we are blessed or cursed with several party houses and filming houses, with both elements contributing to major issues in our community. We have an additional problem at Mount Olympus. We're one of the few homeowner associations that has CC&Rs, and our CC&Rs specifically prohibit commercial activity and define single well dwellings as for family use only. We have not elected to challenge this legally, although our attorneys tell us that we could challenge filming in our community, but we prefer not to. The points I wish to make is there has to be some vehicle for community education by LA Film. There has to be a liaison between the permitting agencies and the community, LAPD being the lead agency. I'm not sure that LAPD people who rubber stamp permits know the unique traffic issues of Mount Olympus and Jupiter and Hercules Drive, which are through bypasses to avoid Laurel Canyon traffic. So I urge any draft to be put through community scrutiny in a public hearing period. And Mount Olympus would welcome from anybody such a draft. So would the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council, of which I'm a member. So would the Hillside Federation, which so far we have been sort of kept out of the loop of this particular document. We urge you to keep us in the loop. We'll be happy to give anybody our emails or our addresses. Thank you.
Thank you. Do give the clerk there the email addresses.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Eric Nichols.
Thank you, Councilman, for hearing me today. My name is Eric Nichols with Pacific Production Services. I have been a permit coordinator and specialist both in LA and all surrounding communities for the last 20 years. That's all I have focused on. When I originally approached council about this issue and said I wanted to be involved, it was indicated that I should not be because I was a potential bidder, so I have not been engaged at the level that this could be. I'm here today to ask two key questions. One is, in the RFP it mentions stakeholders that have been consulted. I'm curious to know who those stakeholders are because I haven't been engaged. I'm hoping that we can get an answer on that today. Also, in the RFP itself, it makes comment about a signature or community survey, but it does not indicate whether that is going to be left in the hands of production or the contractor will end up doing that work on behalf of the city. I'd kind of like to see a clarification on that. And thirdly, I'd like to say that I support Ms. Walsh's position with the MPAA in the sense that there are still some challenges that need to be overcome in this. And really, that's all I wanted to say to you today, that it's that important to all of us as well.
Appreciate that. And city staff, I hope you've got down those three questions because we'd love for you to respond first. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Councilman.
Marilyn Bittner.
Councilman Rosendahl, council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I have been one of the stakeholders at, I would say, probably about 80% of the meetings. And that's why I was puzzled by the RFP draft that I saw. None of the issues were discussed. We have spent the last 10 months discussing movie officers. And that was, it reared its head about the same time that we formed our committee. And meeting after meeting that I attended, which I think was probably between 70 and 80% of the meetings, dealt with movie officers and what seemed to be an imminent problem of the active duty taking over from our retired officers. So I'm puzzled as to when well, none of the meetings I was at were we given an opportunity to discuss any of the other issues. And so when I saw in that lengthy document that stakeholders had been involved in writing this, I was puzzled because I had, like I said, attended 70 to 80% of the meetings, had spoken to people who had had private meetings, which probably accounted for another 5%, and none of them had addressed anything other than the movie officers. So I think that this document does need to be revisited, and I think the stakeholders need to have input in the other issues, which we never did get the proper time to discuss.
Thank you very much for your comments. Does city staff want to respond to some of those questions before Mr. Smith speaks?
Sorry, I don't know if I caught all of Eric Nichols' questions, but I know the one about stakeholders who attended. I'm sure because there were so many meetings, I believe the chair of the committee on most of those occasions kept sign-in sheets, so I'm sure we could pull those together. I don't know offhand. And what was the second question?
Well, the two questions key were specifically who are the stakeholders, individual people, not just groups. I really want to know some of the groups that were involved in those people, because I have concerns about that and the way this document's turned out. Secondly, is the signature survey or community survey process that's listed in the back here on page, community survey guidelines is 857, it talks very specifically about the guidelines of that, but it doesn't indicate, is this something performed by the contractor, or is this being left in the hands of production managed?
Currently, the community survey, my understanding is that an individual production company can hire whoever they want to conduct the survey.
Correct.
I don't think this proposal is proposing to change that. So this is just to give an idea of what is involved in a community survey.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that we were not changing that in this process.
Yeah, that's not proposed here, but of course at the bidders conference, if we ever got the RFP, out the door, if we had the bidders conference, then we could answer specific questions if it wasn't clear here. Clear here? We could at your direction.
Why beg the question? Just answer it before it's asked.
Okay.
And again, I was expressing support for Ms. Walsh's comments and questions on the RFP, which is, obviously there's still a lot of things to be worked out, and I know you guys are working very hard on this. It's evident by the fact that it's 62 pages long. There's a lot for you to do, and I commend you all for being engaged, because I think this is one of the most important things in our industry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you able to provide them a list of stakeholders, or is that inappropriate?
You mean from each meeting?
I don't know who the names were and that kind of thing.
Like I said, I would have to get with the chair about at what meeting, because I know that there were some sub meetings that even our office necessarily did not attend. So I think I would want to,
that data and go for it.
Get with the chair of the committee
Fine.
and provide it.
Great. Thanks.
I'd be happy to follow that up with you in a few days.
Okay.
Great. Great. Great.
Thank you
great,
very much.
Great. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, well, just a couple of questions were brought up from people that were talking, and if you could either tell me where it is in this document, because we haven't read the whole thing yet either, or explain it to me. Concerns about one person to talk to in LA, whoever that is, and discussions I've had with the industry is there's some of that in already available, but there's a lot of loopholes in who talks to who and who has authorities, et cetera. So who would a person talk to if they had a problem with a shoot that was going on? LAPD?
Well, normally through this RFP, we're looking for a contractor who can provide a 24/7, at least on-call.
But they've had no authority to do anything.
So they may not have the authority to fix the problem, but they would staff a call center or something on a 24/7 basis to take that incoming call. The way we proposed it here is if it was an action currently in progress, where actually a change could be made to mitigate the situation, then they would refer certain things often to LAPD, because they're the only ones who have the enforcement capability. If it's something that's not really an enforcement type activity, it may be referred to someone else. But oftentimes what does happen is people will complain after the fact, so that obviously presents a different kind of issue on how to address it. It's no longer a situation to call LAPD to have them actually fix a problem. It's something maybe for them to consider the next time they're going to approve a permit in X area, because residents are just upset about the frequency, something like that.
Yeah, frequency is a separate issue, I think.
Or or something else like a production who left behind trash.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really do anything to that company, certainly, or currently, but you may call out sanitation and then try to figure out what production company was out there, go after them later, have some kind of enforcement.
Well, let's separate the issues then, because the problem I hear most in my district is people saying, you know, we have a problem, they're out there shooting after their permit allowed them to shoot. There's something going on at the shoot they weren't allowed to do, they're parking and blocking, whatever, they're blocking our driveways. Who do we call? And you call Film LA, and they don't have authority to go out and actually say, move this, stop that, do that. They have no authority to do that. So people call ours and say, well, who do we call? You? No, I don't have
Right.
authority. We call LAPD. And then within LAPD, there's a lot of questions. Who do you
Right.
call? The local watch commander? There's some central bureau. So
Right.
I think what we want to know is in this, can you tell me that there's a specific process laid out with one phone number to call, you know, like 311's one call to City Hall? Is there a specific number I call, citizen X calls, the neighbor next door calls? Who, you know, is that spelled out in here?
It would be still to call the contractor. What we do believe definitely where the improvement needs to take place is the coordination between the contractor and, say, LAPD. You know, LAPD's really stepped up in the last year on their enforcement abilities, having people go out there and do spot checks and so forth. So I know in our conversations with them over the last year about enforcement is that they're really ready to step up to the plate and to be more knowledgeable about the concerns out there. So when they do get a call, they know exactly what to do to either take care of the problem.
Where's this whole conversation in the RFP?
Well, the contractor clearly lays out that we're looking for someone to do 24/7 operation.
Where is it?
What page? At the beginning under scope of work, let me just find. Page A9, we lay out the scope of work for a complaint resolution services.
Wait a minute. A9, my scope of work starts at B.
Oh, maybe that might be last year's.
This is last year's?
If you have something that says attachment B, that's probably last year's. Because this year we only have an attachment A, I'm sorry.
I don't have it, no.
Okay, there's a problem right there. Okay, so
So A9, you know, under scope, under complaint resolution services, you know, we indicate,
But it says referral.
right. Because the contractor will not have any kind of enforcement authority.
But that doesn't,
Can I jump in here? Oh, no. But you can come up here and fill out a card and you can speak.
it seems to me that when we initiated, when I was chair of Public Works 10 years ago, and we initiated the contract, it wasn't just a referral of complaints, it was an ombudsman to solve the problems. There's a difference. This seems very passive,
Well,
and the original intent was to be very aggressive. So where is that?
I guess if you also flip over, because it is broken up into three parts, but all for the same contractor. If you flip to the beginning of the scope of work on page A5, we do address that the contractor would be, let me find the exact bullet.
Can I get another 30 seconds to speak? Great, thanks.
Sorry, I'm just having problems finding the exact bullet. But basically, I'm sorry, that they should be referring, you know, within X amount of time frames.
I
And
want to
that.
see it.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, I got one. Okay, we can start over.
Very good.
page 1.
Where it says assist in timely resolution of community complaints,
Yeah, sorry, what page is that on?
A9, same page.
Oh, no, this,
That was the other part. Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
I don't mean to
It's fine.
intervene in Mr. Smith's time, but it seems to me that the crux of the complaint problem is problem resolution. The spirit of the document seems to be very bureaucratic and not very passionate. If you go back to the old days of the film permit office, that's why it was demolished, because there was no passion. It became completely bureaucratic, particularly with one of the individuals that worked there, and that's why Mayor Reardon targeted it. So I don't know how you, well, I do know. I think the document needs to generate some passion, that these people are responsible for incentivizing and creating a healthy environment for the industry. And this, to me, is just a very bureaucratic contract that you could comply with without being very aggressive at all.
Okay, Richard, hold your thought on that. I'm going to let Greg make his comment that he wanted to, and then I'm going to let him speak. We can go back.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the contract is really with whoever we hire to do the stuff for us.
Right.
And we're giving them the responsibility to take the phone call, but they have no ability to act. And my concern is the ability to act and in a timely manner. I don't want us being notifying a Board of Public Works official and nothing happens until the next morning if there's problems going on at the chute at the moment. And Hal can talk to this in about a minute, but I have been proposing, and I would like to see in there somewhere where we connect the dots. And that is that you call one person at LAPD, and that person has the ability to call whoever is on the site at the moment, and that would be the contractors that are there to maintain control, the retired officers or an active duty officer, somebody that you can call and say, you're exceeding your permit guidelines and we want something to be done about it. Not that we're going to call this agency and they're going to notify someone in the city and it can die there.
Right. I know a lot of that onus then is placed on the city, who will have the, whatever the appropriate department is. And so the RFP is really not the mechanism to accomplish that. This is really, a way to seek bids, for a contractor. I know what we have talked about, additional work that should be done, is that once we're closer to putting a contract in place, individual MOAs may need to be developed with each department saying, contractor will do this, but city department X will do X, Y, and Z, and lay out what their expectation is, how quickly they should respond, given whatever the situation, if it's referred to them. So that's really, the burden's placed on the city, and we would need a document that basically holds the city department to a standard.
So that's got to be done separately.
Right.
Okay.
I just want to make it clear, I totally disagree. I mean,
Okay, to continue
well,
at
no,
this
no,
point.
no. The contractor needs to solve the problem,
But if
whatever
they
that takes.
and
They need to be an advocate. They need to be a problem solver. So if you put this out to RFP, and I get this contract, I say, well, okay, I'm going to set up a referral system where, so when I go to hire somebody, I'll hire somebody with referral skills. But if I want to hire a problem solver, that's quite a different contract. This doesn't exude that demeanor. It's, we're gonna send the complaint. Basically, it says we're gonna send the complaint to LAPD, and it's on them to solve it. Instead of saying we're gonna work with LAPD and the production company to solve the problem and mediate and negotiate and resolve the problem. That's a whole different.
But the one
environment.
problem with that is then we'd have to draft an ordinance that empowers them with some legal ability to do that, because right now they have no ability.
Executive order. The mayor, I think, should produce a document that tells people that when they get a call from this office, they got to respond, or they should respond for the good of the city. I mean,
That can't be done by an executive order.
I know that,
Well, it can't be enforced by executive order, but it can be inspired. The people that are working in the system need to understand the nexus between the overall well-being of the city of Los Angeles and getting the problem solved.
Councilmember David Hirano of the CAO's office. I hear you, and I'm one of the few people left from the time you're referring to, back in the early 90s.
You still have air.
Yes. Not much.
You're a lot taller, though.
Yeah, good one. But I understand what you're getting at, and I think the desire not to go backwards and the desire not to repeat the mistakes that were made back in the early 90s is an important one and a valid one. And it sounds like you would like us to look at it again, and we can go back and we can look at the way the RFP is structured, the language, and some of the requirements to see if we can't do exactly what you're saying. We will want to be careful that we don't inappropriately assign or raise expectations of assignment of enforcement authority to the contractor, but we do want to encourage the contractor to be a part of the team and be an active solution in resolving these problems. And so I hear you. We can definitely do that, and get back to you guys.
That's my concerns. His were a little different, so.
Yeah.
Well, I think, as I look at it, and I'd like to hear again from Mr. DeLong and the department, I think you're looking at two different things. There's some things you can go do and solve with the staff of whoever we hire to do this, and that is to go out and communicate with the neighborhood and resolve those issues. Some of them is just going out and saying, okay, you're exceeding your permit, stop. And they can't do that now without some sort of authority that we would either give them through a ordinance or some sort of agreement, or look to the people that really are the professionals, and that's the folks wearing the blue suits.
Could I address that?
Yeah, Hal, and then I think the sergeant has dealt with this for a long
And
time.
we'll let you all interact right with Hal. Go ahead first.
Just as regard to your concerns about...
Identify yourself.
I'm Hal DeYoung. I'm the president of the Motion Picture Officers Association, representing the active and retired officers that work in the motion picture industry. We do the traffic and crowd control. We also have been given de facto authority by the industry to enforce the permits. The industry, and you have an industry representative here today who I'm sure will confirm this, they don't want to see rogue companies out there violating the permits. They want the officers on the location to enforce the permits. The contract that exists between the production company and the city through Film LA currently contains language in the boilerplate language that acknowledges that the permit can be pulled if they're in violation of it. So they've already signed the agreement when they get the permit that they agree to enforcement. The retired officers and the active off-duty officers that are out there working have a contract with the police department that says that we will enforce the permit. So that empowers us to enforce the permit, and we do that. The problem comes in the current system, and it is addressed in the RFP. When I glance through there is language in there that addresses this. The problem in the current system is you have some companies that want to know that they're going to film till 1 o'clock in the morning, but they know they can't get signatures to do that. Nobody's going to sign to let them be in the neighborhood till 1 o'clock. So they try and get signatures to go to 11, an hour past their curfew. At about 9:30, myself or the other lead officer goes to the company and says, you got about a half an hour of camera time left, and then you're going to have to pick up your stuff so you're out of the neighborhood by 11. Yeah, okay. They pick up the phone, they call Film LA, the permit issuing authority, they wake up the night person, and they say, we're running a little bit behind, we need a writer to let us go till 1 o'clock in the morning. And the Film LA person says, yeah, okay, fine, my name is such, you got it. Now, I may have had 3 or 4 residents come out and talk to me, and I assure them that they're going to be out of the neighborhood by 11 o'clock. They're telling me about this film company last week that went till 1 o'clock, and they're all upset, and they want to make sure it's not going to happen again. And I get undermined because now they've got a writer from Film LA. Well, we've addressed this with city council staff, and it's been addressed in this RFP draft, that they're going to be required to contact the lead officer or the fire safety officer out there on the location. So we feel we can fix that. In fact, we talked with your deputy, Laura, about fixing that now before we even go to the RFP, so that the Film LA person is required to contact the lead officer or the fire safety officer out there before granting this extension. We're the people on the ground, we're representing the city, and we can tell Film LA, no, it's not appropriate. This is a sensitive area like the Mount Olympus area where these people don't want filming to go past 11. And, you know, if you wanted to go past 11, you should have gotten signatures, and we can deal with the signature process in the appropriate way. But they wouldn't have gotten signatures to go to 11. So this is where the system is breaking down at the current time. It's not that the officers that are on the scene aren't doing their job or the fire safety officers aren't doing their job. It's that we're getting undermined by Film LA giving them these extensions. And it's almost a passive-aggressive behavior on some of these film companies' part. They know they can't get permission to go to 1 o'clock in the morning, that nobody would sign for that. So they're backdooring the process.
Mr. DeLong, may I ask you a question then? You work for the filming company or the Wrangler, whoever's hired you. You're not working for LAPD. You're not working for Film LA. So your job is at risk if you start telling them no. They're going to say, we're not going to hire that guy again. Get him out of here. Find someone else. So how do we guarantee that you do your duty for the city of LA? Because
I'm being supervised by the on-duty police personnel. If I violate the provisions of my work,
but they're not there all the time.
No, but if I'm in violation, my work permit to do these jobs can be suspended or revoked. And I'm not going to risk my work permit to do these jobs to let some film company go past the hours that they're supposed to film.
Okay, so the answer is that we not just put it in your hands, but there has to be an additional sign-off from LAPD saying they concur.
Well, I work under contract from LAPD. I have a work permit which has specific paragraphs in it which specify what I may and may not do and what my obligations are out there. If I violate that, they can take that contract, my permission, my work permit, away for violating the contract. So
how do they know?
By complaints, by inspection. Sergeant Duran is frequently out there in the field checking on the.
I'd like to hear from the sergeant on that.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Just a moment. Hang loose there.
Hi. Before I let my supervisor, I'm Ray Garvin. I'm a lieutenant with the police department. I'm the officer in charge of the new contract services section. I didn't anticipate making any comments today, but I felt we were at a point where you had more questions. Right.
Glad to have you.
Thank you. To my right is Sergeant Rich Duran, who's been doing a lot of the permit enforcement for some time out in the field and working with the work permits. And to my left is Sergeant Lisa Turvey, who works Emergency Operations Division, has been handling a lot of the permit review and stuff of that nature. I'd like to comment directly to some of the comments made by Mr. Dijon. It's the department's position is that the oversight at film locations is grossly inadequate, and we seek to improve those, the enforcement of the permits with on-duty, active-duty Los Angeles police officers. We have, and it's probably not the time and place to go into it, but lots of documented cases where the permits have gone over and there's been problems with the enforcement of the permit hours specifically, and the causes for those. So one of the big reasons we're involved in this, and historically, is to get better permit enforcement. We have a plan to work with the eventual contractor, the current contractor, Film LA, a very specific plan that would improve direct oversight on a daily basis of both the permits that come in and the film locations. So I can't really get into specifics in this forum on that, but I can tell you that a lot of the issues I've heard today so far with respect to high frequency in communities, those are all issues that we are specifically have recommendations to address on our part of it with our proposal.
Great, thank you for that, Lieutenant. Sergeants, either one first.
Good afternoon, I'm Lisa Turvey, Emergency Operations Division. Just one quick note on the enforcement question that came up earlier. Since approximately 2001 or 2002, we have had existing policies which designate a sergeant within each area patrol division as a film location coordinator. It's an ancillary assignment, however, it is a specific policy addressing that issue. The sergeants receive and review any permit notifications that they may receive, and they're also required to conduct audits as available. Area patrol personnel are always available to respond to any complaints involving film locations. It's been my experience that, like the CAO mentioned earlier, the majority of the time, the complaints do not come to our attention or my attention until well after the fact. So that's one challenge I think that might have to be addressed.
In the
at some
case
point.
that was described where the community, where a production company is going beyond their hours, you said that you've had a number of problems. What are we doing when those things happen? I mean, have we stopped productions? Are we pulling the permits of the officers who are not enforcing their contracts? What are we doing?
Well, let Sergeant Duran speak to that issue. He's most knowledgeable on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Most of the time, most of those cases are mitigated through FMLA and through the production company that's on scene, or with the retired police officers that are on scene. But in cases that it's gone beyond that, we have incorporated, since I've been put in the position that I have been within the last year, the procedure is now FMLA contacts myself in regards to a community concern or from one of the field deputies from the council district, and I go out there and conduct an investigation and try to solve that issue between the council office, the community personnel out there, and the community persons, along with the production company, and then talking to, if need be, the retired officer that was on scene or whatever. We have been going after cases where there's non-permitted film locations where we have taken and now cited those production companies when we get noticed that, advised by that by the community, and we send out a patrol unit, and then that copy of the report gets sent to myself and gets sent to Emergency Operations Division. And within the system of FMLA right now, that production company gets flagged within their system because they violated it. And then the city prosecutor, city neighborhood prosecutor.
So have we done this?
Yes, sir.
And have officers, or I should say, those officers who are currently working security, have they had their work permits taken away?
Yes, there's currently there's one case that we have that had always been taken away by one of the officers.
One case?
One case as of now.
And what has been the reaction? Has the discipline worked systematically? I mean, you go after one permit. I would think the other people say, "Hey, wait a minute! I don't want my permit to go, so I'm gonna have to."
Well, currently we have approximately 10 complaints on the retired police officers.
Mm-hmm.
2 are pending cases right now. Because they're pending cases, I can't discuss them, along with ones in a lawsuit right now.
Yeah.
We had several of them that didn't even have a work permit.
Now, I do have to ask you one question. If we use on-duty officers during a tactical alert, would those officers remain in place, or would they respond to the alert?
You would have to differentiate between how do I phrase without getting into specifics of the plan that we're proposing? But currently, you have Sergeant Duran that does the enforcement, so you have one person.
No, I'm saying if we went to on-duty personnel, what would occur on a tactical alert? Would they remain in place, or would they respond to the tactical alert?
On a mobilization, they may not.
Okay,
a tactical alert is a pretty routine process.
Okay, describe the difference between the two.
A tactical alert could be anything from where a geographic division has calls that goes beyond their resources, maybe a shooting or something, and they need to bring resources from another division.
Okay.
And so then, in order for communications divisions to bring resources from a different part of the city, they declare a TAC alert.
So it's just a shifting.
The TAC alert can be a bureau level.
Now, a mobilization, describe
A mobilization is a situation where you would have, like the riots, when the department goes to A and B shifts. All schedules are out the window, all days off are canceled. It's something of such a magnitude that you go to A and B shifts and you have a night watch and a day watch, and it goes like that. Those are much fewer. TAC alerts are common. They happen every day. they're not the same as obviously the mobilizations would be. So if we had, for example, supervisors, on-duty supervisors whose job it was to enforce permit conditions, no, during attack alert, they would not be subject to that type of recall. In a mobilization, it could, depending on where this unit is eventually housed and are they part of the A Watch or B Watch, but those situations would be at such a magnitude that it would impact the overall city, like a 9/11. If you know, God forbid, you had something like that happen in downtown.
So if there's like a bank robbery, I'm from the San Fernando Valley. I
Give you
mean,
an
we're
example.
the capital of bank robbery. So
The Bank of America shootout,
but let's
no,
say-
they would not be subject to call up on something like that.
No, but let's say an officer is filming on Sepulveda and Ventura, and there's a bank robbery at Kester and Ventura. Would an on-duty officer respond? I would think, I would want them to respond.
I think you need to differentiate between if an officer was hired to work the film site as an option, which is something more specific that I'm really not prepared to discuss as far as that proposal. We're still in the process of getting that out to council and through the police commission.
Yeah.
But hypothetically, if you had, say, Sergeant Duran, whose job it is to drive around and check locations, and he's driving to one location and a bank robbery goes down a block away, of course, absolutely.
But a retired officer would not.
No, retired officers have no law enforcement powers.
So they would not respond to the bank robbery, so there would be absolutely no disruption in service.
Well, because again, you're talking about the service on the set. Hypothetically, also, if
Well, there's a reason why we have somebody
Well, I know, but
providing security on the set, because we don't want things to go haywire. We don't want a riot at a movie because there's a bank robbery a mile away.
if you had, well, I'll give you an example right now. Currently, active duty police officers are hired to work film locations right now alongside, they're off-duty active police officers alongside with the retired officers. If a bank robbery goes down 2 blocks away, they're not going to leave the movie set to go to it. They're there to provide the security and the traffic flow on the set. For example, if they're in the
I'm
middle
not
of...
sure I agree with that policy.
Consequently, though, well,
I think I want them to respond.
they also have to become aware of it.
Yeah.
Or do they have a radio? Do they have it turned on? Because a lot of them are listening to the frequency at the film location to the stuff that's going on germane to that. If they see a crime in progress, obviously right in front of them, they are required to take the appropriate action. That's the expectation. That's what would happen. So, under current conditions, but if there was something several city blocks away,
Unless they're a city council member, right?
That's Dennis Stein, not me.
So
Be clear.
Right now, just the way it's set up now with the radios and the way it works, I don't think you don't have that. I mean, I'm not the expert on that. Rich is, and others can speak to that. But if there was a plan down the road to introduce more off-duty active into that situation, we would have specific provisions for that.
Well, I just, if you haven't figured it out by now,
No,
I have
I mean-
serious concerns about the proposed use of on-duty officers on their own time or any other time when we have a limited police force. And I'm not there yet. I think the RFP is not dealing with that issue. We're more concerned with, under the current RFP, whether or not the existing security force that is in place is sufficiently monitored by the LAPD to discipline them when appropriate so that they'll do their job better if necessary. I think that's what we're looking for. In terms of any other proposals that are floating out there, I think we're a long way away from that. Particularly in these economic times when we're looking at budget cuts, we didn't even talk about the liability issue. Huge issues emerging, and so I just want to be very clear. The only thing I'm here and concerned about is the RFP as it is relative to the existing security force of retired police officers, even if there are some off-duty officers who are being
That's
employed.
exactly why Sergeant Duran was put in place a little over a year ago, and why we've seen the improvements at the locations, and why we want to make it even better.
I think you
through
will.
this process or another process, obviously.
Okay, before we take any motions here, Mr. Smith's going to speak some more.
Oh, no, I'm done. I just want to say to Sergeant Duran, I've heard nothing but good things from the industry, from the cops. Everyone has good things to say about you. So you're the right person
Your
to pick.
reputation has preceded you.
So thank you for that. Congratulations.
What we do have one more person who has not spoken before we entertain motions among ourselves, and we do have a second comment from one who has spoken. So if I could just ask Christine Peters to come on up, and with the indulgence of my colleagues, we do have Stu Miller who would like to come up a second time.
Christmas tree back.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. I came here for a street
Your name
vacation
for the
here.
record.
Christine Peters.
Uh-huh.
I'm with the Greater Echo Park Elysian Neighborhood Council, and I've been recently serving on the Echo Park Film District Guidelines Committee, which hopefully will pass council next week. I'm a 20-year motion picture and television employee. I see lots of benefits to the city of Los Angeles beefing up our film permitting agency. I've worked with Film LA quite a bit, positive and negative. When you call Film LA and you have a problem and the answer that you get is, we can't do anything, that's a problem, and that needs to be addressed in this RFP. And I do have to say that as a stakeholder who has participated in this issue for over a year now, I would also like to know what stakeholder groups have been involved in the process, because I know none of the film districts that I'm actively involved in, Echo Park, Arts District, Hollywood, I don't know anyone who's been invited to any of these meetings. So I think it's important to know who the stakeholders are that are being asked these questions. Enforcement is absolutely the thing that's lacking with the current permitting agency. There is no ability to enforce. And anytime you ask Film LA, they just don't have that power. And it happens that there's DOTs involved, LAPDs involved. There's too many agencies that are involved in doing too many parts of the business. So that really needs to be firmed up through the process. And so I did want to just get up and speak about that, because enforcement is the largest issue. And, you know, Film LA essentially represents the film industry at the end of the day. We need somebody representing the community, so there's checks and balances. So when someone does have a legitimate complaint, there is an answer, there is a resolution, and we can keep moving forward. I, as much as anyone else, want to continue working in Los Angeles in the film industry. I just spent the last summer in New Orleans. I don't want to have to do it again. So anything you guys can do to help us create a resolution here, I'd be more than happy to work on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me one brief additional comment. I'd like you gentlemen to take this thought with you when you leave this meeting from the residents' point of view. The Film LA, and I think it has something to do with the RFP, if I understand correctly what that document is supposed to do. The Film LA, Inc. has a board of directors comprised of 25 people. 3 of them are residents' representatives. The others are from the industry, from the unions, from the civic government, and so there are only 3 voices, and I even question whether they are legitimately representing representatives, because some of them are also in the industry. So if the community is to have any real input, there's an imbalance there that needs to be addressed, and whether it's Film LA that gets the new contract or some entity that replaces them, I don't know how you express this in the RFP, but it seems to me they should have a much larger input from residential members of their governing group, whether that's a board of directors or something else, so that we feel like we're fairly treated.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Is there any kind of residential advisory board or anything?
No, none.
Good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to read on page A9 for those, and I think we're all on the same page, but the problem proceeds from here, and that is, it says provides response services to complaints on a 365-day-a-year, 24-hour-a-day, 7 days a week basis, and 2, refer complaints to appropriate city personnel and contractors within 15 minutes if the activity is currently in process. So I think the framework is there in the RFP. It's the discussion of what happens after that notification that we have to have on a separate day on a separate forum, I think. But that, I agree with you, that is a big problem. So, and then the only question, that question I had is for staff, is that there was some concern that the survey as defined is not good enough to do any good. The survey that's required to be taken in the community.
I mean, the comment from the community member about, you know, what is really the value
Late
in
to
it,
do any
and,
good.
and how is it done? I mean, that is part of the reason we understand. We heard industry today say asking industry to do it 5 days in advance is is too much,
Right.
but we have to weigh that against community who
24 hours
wants
is not
you
enough.
know, we need it
So-
more further in advance. And it's mostly not to say that the filming's not going to happen or is going to happen. It's not really an approval. It doesn't require a 50% vote says yes. What it is for residents to identify things that could be mitigated so that they could more or less welcome filming and coexist with it. So if you have someone who's having a bar mitzvah or a wedding or something, they can say, look, I need parking in front of my house. I have this event going on, so that, a contractor and working, mostly that would be where the contractor would step in and mitigate and say, okay, we're going to give you parking, but we can't give it right here. We're going to shift it down a few houses or whatever the needs are.
Has the CAO done any analysis on the economic impact of 5 days?
On industry economic analysis, no, but what we did do is working with the current provider. Most of these provisions, including that, is what they have said normally occurs now, because
So you don't know whether there's any negative economic impact to what you're saying, and you can't identify, like on TV shoots, as was described, they need less than 5 days' notice.
Right.
You can't tell me how many shoots we would lose as a result of that recommendation?
no. I mean, but the community survey, it is only supposed to be for,
I'm not talking about a survey. I'm talking about the CAO doing analysis, which is what the CAO does. Economic analysis. We're in an economic crisis.
so on how the RFP would
So
impact.
could I ask that the CAO provide analysis to the economic impact of that provision and any other provision that might have a negative impact on the economy?
Okay.
And I'm not suggesting that we don't bear in mind the community, but what good is it if we create a system that pushes these shoots outside of Los Angeles and erodes the resources that we get from this industry in terms of jobs and financial, because we didn't want to give them 2 days' notice? I mean, it might not be worth it.
Right. I understand what you're saying. When we did craft them, we did compare them with like over 100 surrounding cities in the immediate area.
Did they do the economic analysis? They're not Los Angeles. This is Hollywood. I mean, the impacts are going to be much greater.
Okay.
Mr. Smith.
Well, are we done? Do you have any more questions or anything? No?
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to suggest that as I looked at the referral, this got to go yet to public safety and budget and finance both.
That's correct.
And obviously, there's a lot of questions. I haven't even read this entire document. I know my staff hasn't. And there's a lot of questions that were brought up today. But I don't want to slow this process down because we have time issues, and we're already way too late on this anyway. So what I was going to suggest is that I was going to suggest originally holding this committee another week or two while we look at it, but I don't want to do that. But since we have 2 more committees to go to, maybe we'd ask that we'd have a joint meeting of Public Works and Public Safety as the next step. And then it gives time people to review, but keep the train going in the right direction, at least for the moment.
Do I have a second on that?
Yep.
And it makes a lot of sense, frankly, because when the LAPD came up and was clear about it, we do have issues there that need to be resolved. I've spoken to the chair of Public Safety before this meeting, since it wasn't referred to his committee officially by the clerk. Would we be able to take it there, and would he hold a hearing as well? And he said he certainly would. So the idea of a joint committee meeting with Public Safety allows these issues, Lieutenant, that you raised to be brought up, and it also allows everybody here in the room another opportunity to take a hard look. We could separate the RFP out and let that move forward if there was a sense of that, or we can leave that with it as part of public safety. Any comment on that, either of you?
I don't think the department's ready. Are you ready to discuss this matter yet? Have you got a proposal yet?
We have a proposal, sir. Yes, we are prepared to discuss our latest proposal on that.
So then, would it be in the committee's interest to refer the RFP and other issues to public safety, or separate the RFP from that process?
Well, let me understand. Is LAPD's proposal such that we're essentially creating
They
a
are
new...
separate issues, to be candid.
Is it such that we are essentially creating a new process?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then we have to start all over with a new process.
Not a new RFP, though. Your process will be
Separate.
separate, but part of.
Yes, because
So-
the RFP covers the contract with the entity that's hired to do all the city services, and we're improving our department process and changing some things, our proposal that is internal, and obviously that we will have to work with the Film LA or whoever is the wins the bid eventually for that. But we do have a proposal that we are in the process of floating around to various stakeholders, and I would say you'd probably have to speak with Chief McDonald to see if
Yeah.
he was prepared to go forward with.
I don't know if we
state-
can anyway, because, Adam, we haven't had any kind
We
of,
have not formally received
we
anything
Yeah.
in regard
So
to that
until it's
process. All we have
transmitted.
is the RFP before us.
yeah. So all we can do is have the RFP discussion, and if we want to hold up for this discussion to take place at the same time, that's going to hold the RFP up for quite a while, probably.
I mean,
You still got to go to
how
your,
far away from implementation?
well, you still got to go
are
to
you?
your commission before it's transmitted, right?
Right, yeah, because the last time this
Ain't
went
gonna
through,
happen
sir,
soon.
was it went through the commission in 2005, and it was approved in concept, and now we've got more specificity with respect to what we have in mind.
Yeah, just as a ballpark, how long would it take to implement?
It wouldn't take long at all, because I have some staff in place that we are already doing to get a lot of this work forward. We have a lot of the processes in place, so it would be a matter of having a final determination on what direction we're going with a number of issues that deal with filming locations and implementing them.
Here's my concern, that you have to submit something to the police commission, air it in the sunshine. That has to then go from the police commission to us so that we can focus on it. That whole process will certainly be a much longer process from this very moment.
It has taken years to get to this date so far. So,
I'm
yeah.
just
So when
wondering-
you say not long at all,
There were a lot
Well,
of
I
heads
mean-
nodding about moving the RFP forward on a separate track through the various committees. We can have a joint meeting with safety, but keep that process going. And when or if you have something, because right now it's nothing until you actually physically put
Right.
something before that commission. We then can deal with that, obviously, and either complement or change or whatever we need to do to go forward with.
yeah, as a term-limited elected officials, not long at all has much different meaning to me than it does to you.
When he dealt with this 10 years ago.
But my point is, we don't have a contract in place.
Yeah.
And to delay the RFP is, when I don't see any, I don't really see how the police department would be in a position to implement in less than a year. We have to move forward with the RFP, and so I don't think we should go
Yeah,
by.
and I think the clause in here that exists now, when it says you must notify the city within 15 minutes, it's up to us to figure out what that means at
Right.
our end of it.
That's why
The
some of the
latest-
language, I know I heard the comment about the city, but we have defined, the city
Yeah.
generically in that sense. But we would expect, actually, when you negotiate a contract and you work out all the finite details, you would obviously specifically tell the contractor who they are supposed to
It's an open loop at our end, not this contractor, whoever it is.
Right. But they would be told specifically who to contact when we get to that point.
Okay.
What's
now,
the,
let's hear
what's the
your motion
proposed
again.
duration of this
Our motion
contract?
is just to send the RFP.
The duration is up to 10 years is what it says right now, because it would be most likely a 3-year with maybe 2-3 years to extend.
Let's hear the motion again.
So the motion is just to send to public safety without comment, the RFP, and request a joint meeting.
And that, results of that meeting
Then will be
encompass
transferred.
what this committee,
Right.
unless you guys continue to further.
Unless we split, which can happen, but.
No.
But allows the joint committee to weigh in on an issue. You second that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so moved unanimously on that we will then send it to a joint committee meeting of Public Works and Public Safety, and whatever comes out of that process will go to Budget Committee for its way, and before it goes before the City Council. Does that make sense? City Attorney? Okay, all right.
Thank you.
You betcha.
Oh, yes, it'll be a public meeting, and we'll probably have
Adam,
to hold it
do
downstairs.
all the names that spoke today, anyone sign in, go to that committee for notification then?
There's no formal process, and.
There
it's
is
kind of
now.
And I could facilitate that.
Okay.
If they give
Okay.
me
All right.
good
Yeah,
time.
normally we.
So you know your instructions now, right? We're going to hold a joint meeting.
And I'll make sure everyone knows
Public
what's
safety
going
and Public Works. The draft will get circulated enough for people to read it in public safety, and any reaction or comments from this, you can incorporate that in that, and we'll hold another meeting on this subject. Thank you all for coming. Have a great day.